welcome everybody. Welcome to the talk. And this talk is entitled Education Data Mining. And our speaker today is Smruti Sudarshan, who is a learning and development consultant at LinkedIn. And she has her engineering degree, so she's coming to this topic from the technology side, but also has an MBA. And so she will be sharing her insights into the next big thing in corporate learning. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll pass it on to you.
Yep. Thanks for that, Kinga. That was a really good introduction of what my job role is. So before we quickly move on to what we are doing, so here is, let me go ahead and share my screen so that we know where we are at and what we are doing. Yeah. So today's topic at the Learning Ideas Conference of mine is known as educational data mining. I know it sounds complicated, but trust me, there's nothing complicated behind it. It's just that it's a part of education or learning that has not been covered, or I mean, I can say that it's not explored. It's a very niche field that's just been up as of now with the analytics and AI coming into picture. So before we deep dive into what exactly is educational data mining, let me go ahead and take you through how much amount of data is actually collected on a day-to-day basis or in your day-to-day life. So this was again a research that was conducted, and we found that there was like about 2.5 quintillion bytes of data that are created and stored. So these bytes of data are not just the ones that are created from the social media, but they are also created and stored, and whatever is there is collected through the entire global data. That's like 2.5 tons on quintillion bytes of data that is created, that's been collected. So yeah, and most of our decision making, so this is on a day-to-day basis where we collect 2.5 bytes of data, but on a day-to-day basis, we do take our decisions on the basis of this 2.5 bytes of data. So what kind of decisions do we take? And in that, not even 2.5, it's like less than 0.1% of it, or even I can say like maximum 5% of it is what we collect as the learner data. So now, learner data is something wherein we collect through any LMS. I mean, even if you just collect your attendance record or your attendance sheet that you take in a classroom, or when you're in an ILT, when you circulate that attendance record, that is also learner data. But to give it a bit more fancier aspect of it and the visual aspect of it, so this learner data is actually collected during an LMS. If you give it on the e-learning part of it, so it's basically collected from the LMS part, and which is stored in the database. But also, if I take this as an example, like you're maybe felicitating an VILT or an ILT, and you see the facial expressions of your learners, and then you like for example, if your lesson is boring and someone is yawning and if someone is really bored, you can actually see their facial expressions, and then go ahead and say that, okay, this guy is bored or this girl is bored, let me go ahead and give a pop quiz, or let me make this class a bit more engaging. So similar to how those facial expressions are when you get it on the learner part of it, or like when you're in the ILT part of it, is where we get the facial expressions from the learner data, which is in the e-learning part of it. So this data is what we collect and uncover the insights. So basically they're like the footprints that are left on the LMS, and this is the data that we collect and we analyze the learner's behavior, and this collectively is known as learner data. Now, how does it look? How does this data look? This is again a final product. I mean, there's much more that goes in the back end of it, and there's just a prototype of how it looks, but this is just a final product of how exactly the data is visualized. And this is only for the learner or the front end part, because the back end part is something which I won't be able to show. So again, for the learner, this is the learner dashboard that we do, and any data that you can see over here, right here. So the red color one is the test data. All these are like the quizzes data, and these are the course data. So what I'm talking about here is that this data kind of helps the learner to analyze his or her learning. Now, for example, if I take the courses, onboarding checklist for new employees. There is definitely 100% in it, but the ethics and compliance training has 33% completion rate. So again, if I have to go on the databases, I can say that why exactly is there 100% in the onboarding checklist, and why exactly is the ethics and compliance course saying 33%? So please go ahead and put in your comments in the chat, and I'll come back to you on why exactly do you think these two are like this. The data shows like this. One maybe again, as I'm saying, so this is 133. For me, according to me, from my perspective, the onboarding checklist is something very important for the employees, because they go ahead and they have those resources wherein they can go and tick and say that which is important for the first day, but ethics and compliance is something that is not important to them on the first day. And so they have just passed it on, and they're just giving it like a 33%, and the completion rate is just 33%. So this is again for just one student, or maybe I can also say that this person or this student or this learner has just completed 30% of the course and not completed the entire part of it. So yeah, so this goes with the learner data and how it has been interpreted. So if you find any other interesting insights, please go ahead and put it in the comments or the chat, and I would be able to look into that. So quickly moving on now into after learner data, what exactly are we doing here is mining this data, or I can also say that we're going to go ahead and scratch the surface of the data, so that we go and get that data, and we give those insights to our L&D consultants or to the instructional designer, the course developers, and say that, look, this is what the learner is showing online. Why don't you go ahead and change your strategy so that it kind of engages the learner better, and also the learner can kind of learn better from what you're putting out. So that is known as educational data mining. And where exactly it falls under is between the learner analytics and the ML part of it. So it falls mostly under the LA, that is nothing but the learner analytics, and it's just a part of it comes under the machine learning. Okay, so this is a basic design of how exactly it works. I mean, don't have to go into the depth of it. So what we do is that there is a student, there's this faculty, and there's an administrator. So basically you have three views, and one view is your student view or the learner view. The other backend is your faculty view, and both of them will be monitored by something known as your super admin, which is, or the super admin, you can call him a super admin or an administrator, who will be monitoring both of them. So yeah, so what we do is that, just like as you see on Netflix or Amazon, whenever you go and put something in the cart, or whenever you go and click something, and you say that this book is something that I like a lot, or maybe like a motivation book that you like a lot, wherein you go and put that, so that is taken as a suggestion by this predictive model over here, and it predicts what the learner has to learn further, or what you have to buy further. So similar to this, we have something known as data-driven learning design. Again, this is a marketing concept which is used in the field of learning. Nothing different here. The only thing that is different here is your predictive model, which kind of goes and shows ahead or tells a learner how to be self-directed. So for example, if I take a university learner who is very much interested in learning about, say, biology, and the biology is where you have like botany and zoology. So again, does the student want to be a botanist, or does he want to be a zoologist? So depending on what the student wants, he or she can go ahead and explore the entire LMS, and we get to know how exactly they're exploring and their learning patterns on the LMS. So this is the entire design of it. It's pretty in depth, and right now I will not be able to explain the algorithm part of it, but definitely it just works on the predictive model. Now, this is the final product of how exactly you're going to impact the corporate learning, or how exactly it's going to impact the corporate learning. So there are three aspects of it. One is definitely the the learning behaviors with data model, because if I have to supply someone, or if I have to go ahead and say that this is the learner model that you may have to choose, because sometimes what happens, for example, I don't know if you've seen there are like these 100 like there are like 10 videos, and if you have an AI course which just has 10 videos in it, like a coding algorithm, and which has got 10 videos in it, I don't know if anyone would kind of be interested. So please put it in the link or the chat below, so that I get to know like if you're actually interested in learning like 10 videos together, or would it be better if we could generate a sandbox environment and then put it as an e-learning part. So what happens here is that when I say I'm going to discover the learning behaviors with data model, so when I say when someone is going to drop off from the course, so why is it that this guy is dropping off, or why is it that this girl is dropping off at exactly this lesson, or if I have like 10 people or 10 students who are using the LMS and all 10 of them have dropped at lesson 3, so definitely there's something wrong in lesson 3 which is there on my end. So this is how the learner behavior with the analysis of the learning behavior goes, because it depends on your drop off rate, and we can exactly determine what exactly is this data model. So this data model is something I'll show you later on, because they are like pretty graphs, and I'll be able to explain it better on a graph. Then yes, definitely the usage of analytics and visual data. So as you can see here, you have like 90%, 65%, 32%. So all of these are analytics, are nothing but the content analytics that we can say, and how exactly is the learning. So for example, what time did the student log in? What time did he log off? And from which place is the student learning more? And also, how much percentage is he scoring, he or she is scoring in certain subjects. So all of these come under the learning analytics, and all of this data can be collected and visualized, and this can be used to our advantage of making the learning more impactful and also engaging the learners better. Then yes, obviously the instructional principle analysis, which I was just talking about, how you can change your learning strategies and all of that. But how are we going to apply this in our day-to-day life? So these are like a few case studies. As I was telling you, this is a learner model which I came across. Again, this is a research which we were doing, and the background for this is that we had to compare between corporate employees who are above like the manager level, the leadership, executive leadership, and the ones who have just come in from a college graduate, plus the ones who have like just spent like 2 to 3 years in the company, so that they get this kind of a data. So what we did was we kind of put education, or like the learning what they had, versus their income. So what we saw here was that, and their age as well. So what we saw here was that the high income and the low moderate education came under the corporate sector, like the executive leadership, who could have this part of it. But the low moderate and the young income came over here, because the at that time company was recruiting a lot of college graduates. So the others were always there here, but then what we analyzed with these two groups were that here the learning was high, but here the higher group income, the learning was pretty much on the go or on the job, was something that they were learning. So that's why the graph showed as low moderate education, and here it says moderate income but young. So again, don't take me wrong on this one. So it's just that here the education, even though they are a graduate, but here even though they're not graduate, the learning here is more, and the target audience is less. So this is what we wanted to see, how exactly we can analyze the learners through this. So this is one learner behavior and one data model. So keeping this two in mind, what we did was for this set of employees, we gave them more of leadership training, like soft skills training, and also this leadership training were in terms of simulation, wherein they're going to actually implement something. But for them, we had to give them a blended approach, so that so they could go and attend the classes, as well as get the e-learnings in terms of refresher. Yeah. So that was one case study. So the other case study here, this learner model is this is for gamification. And the case behind this, or how we exactly kind of nailed this was, we thought that it is best for field engineers to have a game online, because we felt the retention rate for them would be higher if we like give them games. And later on, when we actually found out the dropout rates for all of these are low, that's when we had to kind of change the entire strategy. So why exactly did we put a game was that the stakeholders came back to us saying that we need something creative. Why don't you do something creative? And why don't you put this online so that the retention rate goes higher? But what happened was that the field engineers did not want a game. They literally wanted something that they could have online and on job, so that it behaves like a catalyst for them while they're doing their job. So this is how the case went. And during the game was when we collected this data and put this model. So if you can see here, student 5 has an activity time of 16,476 seconds, but his score is 90. And look at student 22 and look at his activity time and look at the score. So a person who's spending so much time on the course is getting 91, but the person who's spending only so much time on the course is also getting 90. Like, what is the difference between this and this student? I mean, that is something that is pretty much like student 5 and student 22 was very shocking for us. And this led us to understanding what exactly are the outcomes of EDM. So these outcomes are very specific, because again, it was very difficult for us to go ahead and convince the stakeholders as to why we are speaking like this and why it is happening like this. And so we found out like pretty much three outcomes which are like very basic, and which could the data could explain why exactly is this happening. So what happened was that we found that the first one was this is pretty interesting. It's known as the higher effort is good, but not a good predictor for success. To challenge this aspect, there is the data. This is again the average quiz scores, but this can be pretty much understood here in this model. So this student 5 here has been like on the activity like for 16,000 seconds, but he or she has been here. The student 22 has been since 2 lakh whatever seconds he's there, and he or she is there on the activity time. So that means that according to the data, or according to the time that is spent over here, this is pretty larger when compared to the time that is spent here. So which means what, she's putting higher number of efforts, or is it just that her screen is stable? So, or it's like she's just gone out and she's just left it online and then she's gone, or he or she has gone, student 22. So we still don't know, but then we would like to assume that the activity time over here has been spent because he or she was not able to understand the data properly, or not able to understand the content properly for it. So he or she has been putting effort, but not much enough, so that it's just like 0.1%. That's like what, 1% that is higher than that. So similar to that, what we also found here was that if you can see here, this is again for an AI course that we ran. And usually typically technical courses are actually very boring, but we tried to make it as interactive as possible. But what happened was that the students who took up, so if you can see here, this is the average in the reading forums how it goes, and the grade for each one of those scores. So the grade for the scores here in this gray area kind of tapers down at the end of it, because we had given them a DIY project who could only finish, only 2 or 3 members could finish out of the entire 48 students who had enrolled for it. And what happened was that they were pretty sure they were going to clear everything until and unless the DIY project came. So if you can see this part here, so higher rate is here in this portion until I think until the 50th line. This shows the line over here, but you can maybe take it as like the 50th page or whatever it is, whatever is on the course of it. So so till here, or like third module of it, they were okay with it. But as you can see, after the third module, there has been a drop and it has just tapered down until the end. So what we figured out was that even though you put higher efforts, it's good, but it would not be a good predictor for success. And the success here was the DIY project that they had to do at the end of it. This is the first one. But yes, this is the second one. It tells us how exactly the learning happens in classroom. So if you've seen, so this is like a cluster plot. Cluster plot as in like we had like a classroom of about 459. So again, this was done in batches, but the number of students that we took was 459. And if you can see cluster 1, 3, and 4. So cluster 1 were the ones who were given just the ILT, like they were just put in a class 8 hours straight ILT, and look at the certification ratio. That was like 10.53% of it got the certified. But in cluster 2, what we did was we gave them mostly reading material that was there online, and also we gave them a lot of YouTube videos and all these DIY videos, just so that we know so that their writing frequency or what they write in ILT reduces, but their reading and watching frequency improves. So what happened because of that was that their reading frequency increased, watching videos increased, but the number of quiz attempts also increased, and thus the certification ratio also increased. So this just showed that how exactly your video helps you in just enabling just that 1% of it, rather than you standing on a whiteboard and actually writing out the code or any kind of thing on a whiteboard. Just give them videos so that they know how they can learn about. So this was about cluster 2. Then again, cluster 3, we didn't actually give them videos over here. What we tried to do was we tried to give them as many number of quizzes as possible. So quizzes in terms of games, quizzes in terms of like say like a pop quiz while you're doing it, and then read about it and then come back. So the same thing happened over here, but we didn't give them a lot of videos to watch. So same thing. So here also the certification ratio was high because they were doing on the job training, or you can say like they were just understanding like how exactly their role is on their day-to-day basis. So this was about cluster 3. And then you have cluster 4, wherein which had like moderate quiz attempts, and the watching videos were also low, and but then reading and writing was high. So this was like the books kind of a thing that we had given, so the certification ratio was pretty low. So this was about the outcomes of what we had, 3 outcomes of what we had. And plus we also got to know like learning happens all the time. So this is something which we had to prove to someone, like how exactly learning happens and how exactly is the graph shown on when EDM is used, and what kind of data can be got on when you say that learning happens all the time or it's a continuous process. So these were the outcomes of EDM, but basically we used it for 3 main things. One was obviously for designing the learning objectives, so that we know how exactly the learners think, and we can align our learning objectives with the business goals. So that was one thing. Second thing was content design decisions based on the learner models that we had shown them, and also if we could change the strategies on the basis of the content design decisions. And next was consulting and evaluation, which is obviously the learner performance, which the learner himself or herself could direct, or the facilitator or the admin could direct as well. So what happened to the business was that there was continuous access to education. So in this way, we were able to prove that, since learning happens all the time, we need to have that continuous access to education so that, you could be a lifelong learner for it. And plus, on top of that, also the cost reduction and those high ROI. I know there are raves going around which says that there is high return on interest. High, how do you calculate the e-learning ROI and all of that? So how we calculated the ROI was on the basis of engagement and the retention rate of the learner. So that's how we calculated the ROI, which was pretty much high for us. And there was a huge drastic reduction in the cost because of the fact that we would already predict what the learner wants. And in that way, the cost reduction was less. Yes, there was quality improvement, and there was a knowledge society that was formed because of the quality improvement. Quality improvement, again, in terms of learner engagement, and learner engagement for us was a quality improvement at that time. So that's for what happened in EDM in business. So if you think you want to explore this potential of EDM, please feel free to check me out on LinkedIn and LinkedIn profile, and let me know how your story with data has been. That's it. Open to questions.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That was really interesting. So for everyone, please put questions either in the chat or in the Q&A box. And we only have 4 minutes left. So, so if you would like to ask a question, please do so quickly. But that was fascinating. I'm just wondering, do you have an example for how a teacher might use this information in their classroom? Like, can you give us an example of what you have come across?
Totally. So the thing is, we have not experimented with university learners as much as we have experimented with corporate learners. But there are certain MOOCs that are there online, wherein we can collect that data and we can provide it to the felicitators or the university learners or teachers who can kind of analyze this data and kind of change the learning strategy. Also, the quizzing strategy as well is something that they can change, because I don't know how it works in US, but here, anywhere else in India, we kind of there's this rote learning that goes on. We just study the important quizzes just before one day, and then we go ahead and write the test or any kind of quiz that is their exam. So instead of doing that, why don't you just allow the learner to go ahead and just choose his or own subjects that he wants to learn, so that would be better. That would give rise to better opportunities rather than setting up a fixed curriculum. So yeah, but I would definitely love to work with the university learners.
Interesting. Yes, I'm sure every student would love to choose their own curriculum, definitely. But is there a strategy, or is there one maybe a top suggestion you would give to an instructor from the data that you are able to collect? What might be one of the top tips you would give to a teacher or an instructor or professor on how they could use that data in their teaching?
Okay, so again, one thing is that it's best to ask the learner what they want before you even go ahead and start building a curriculum or anything. Because for us, when we got that gamified content out there, it was such a drastic disaster for us, because first of all, they didn't want that, and plus they were field engineers and they wanted just job aids. So I think with all the data that's been collected, best is to ask the learner what they want and what they suggest, rather than us going on our intuition and developing the course on how it should be.
Okay, wonderful. Well, yes, it's always good to get the user insight and how they're receiving that information. So that is fantastic. Well, thank you so much. We have 1 minute left, and people can connect with you on LinkedIn, you said. So that's fantastic. And what do you see as in what's coming up in the future of learning, how this can develop further? What do you see as the exciting aspects of learning with this type of data and datafication? What are you excited about, and what will be coming up in the future?
Right. So for me, I think the excitement would be when this data is able to help the personality disabled employees and the learners for their universities, because for them, learning is a different ballgame. So for example, if you take ADHD, hyperdeficit disorders, so for them, learning is easier when you give them visuals or do activities rather than actually tell them to sit and write like a 1 hour exam or a 2 hour exam. So for me, I think this data is going to enable those special educators and instructors who can kind of go about and analyze that data and say what exactly are the needs of the disabled students or the learners over there. I think that would be a challenging aspect, but I'm excited to be working on that.
Wonderful. Well, there's definitely a lot that is coming up in this space. So thank you very much for sharing your knowledge and your insights. And thank you very much to everyone who joined. This was a really insightful session. So thank you very much for your insight.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.